All right, today we're diving into the story of a man who, you could say, lived two completely different lives. In one, he was basically a footnote, but in the other, he became a national hero to billions of people. This is the incredible story of Norman Bethune, and it shows us that history isn't always just written, sometimes it's built.
So here's the big question, right? How on earth did a Canadian doctor, a pretty controversial guy in his own country, become this massive hero to billions of people in China? It just doesn't seem to add up.
And this is really the heart of the whole puzzle. You know, back in Canada, if you mention the name Norman Bethune, you'll probably just get a blank stare. He's this complex, kind of difficult character who's mostly forgotten. But then you go to China, and he's a legend. I mean, a household name, a symbol of selfless sacrifice that pretty much everyone knows. How can the exact same guy have two legacies that are polar opposites?
Okay, so to even begin to unpack this, we've got to start in Canada. We need to get to know the man himself, and let me tell you, he was, well, to put it mildly, a walking contradiction. I mean, just look at this. It's a total paradox. On one hand, you have a guy who was described as vain, someone who loved his fancy colognes and expensive clothes. He could be difficult, even a misogynist. But then, on the other hand, this same man was an absolutely brilliant and dedicated surgeon, someone so moved by the suffering of the poor that he went and opened his own free clinic. It's like two different people in one body.
So what was the turning point? What could possibly change a person like that? Well, it was a brush with death. In 1926, Bethune gets tuberculosis, which back then was pretty much a death sentence. His own recovery, which happened because of a really risky experimental surgery, just completely rewired how he saw the world. Suddenly, he wasn't just seeing a disease. He was seeing a massive social injustice.
And you can hear it in his own words, right here. This whole experience, it radicalized him. It made him realize that getting life-saving healthcare wasn't really about medicine at all. It was about money. And that single idea would become his obsession. It would drive him for the rest of his life, leading him to fight for socialized medicine and, eventually to join the Communist Party.
Now, as you can imagine, those radical politics didn't exactly make him popular with Canada's medical establishment. He was an outcast, restless, so he made a decision that would not only change his life but completely reshape his place in history. He decided to go to China.
But let's be clear, this wasn't just some noble, heroic quest. It was also a move born out of pure desperation. He felt like his career in Canada was totally finished. His biographers say he felt he had burnt his bridges, even telling a friend, "No hospital will touch me now." So in a lot of ways, China was his last shot.
And from there, the path gets pretty clear and very fast. He joins the Communist Party, he goes to the Spanish Civil War where he perfects things like mobile blood transfusions, and then, in 1938, at almost 50 years old, he travels thousands and thousands of miles to Yunnan, right into the heart of the Chinese Communist resistance against the Japanese invasion.
And this is where the second life of Norman Bethune really begins. Because in China, he wasn't just a doctor anymore. He was transformed into something so much bigger. He became Bai QN.
Almost as soon as he got there, he's meeting with Mao Zedong. He's given this new Chinese name, Bai QN. Now, you can translate that a few different ways, but one of them is particularly powerful: White One Seeking Grace. I mean, doesn't that just perfectly capture a man who was, in so many ways, looking for a second chance, for some kind of redemption?
And once he was there, his work ethic became the stuff of legend. Just look at that number, 115. That's not just a number on a slide. That's 115 surgeries in a single 69-hour stretch. We're talking almost 3 days straight of operating. He'd get so tired he'd literally dunk his head in a bucket of ice water just to force himself to stay awake. Incredible.
But his impact was so much bigger than just that operating table. He created these mobile surgical units that could work right up near the front lines. He wrote medical textbooks, and, maybe most importantly, he trained a whole new generation of Chinese doctors and nurses. He was basically building a modern medical system from scratch in the middle of a war. But then, less than 2 years after he arrived, it all came to a sudden, tragic end. Because supplies were so scarce, he was operating without gloves, and he cut his finger. The wounds got infected, and he died of blood poisoning. Just like that. As Mao would later write, he died, a martyr at his post.
Now, Bethune's death could have just been a sad little footnote in history, but Mao Zedong saw something else. He saw an opportunity.
He wrote this powerful eulogy called In Memory of Norman Bethune, and with those words, he started the process of turning a foreign doctor into a foundational myth for his entire revolution.
So Mao's essay basically frames Bethune as the perfect communist. Internationalism, total dedication, and absolute selflessness. The actual man was gone, but the symbol was just getting started. This image of Bethune became iconic, and Mao's words would define his legacy for generations to come.
And this is the key to how that symbol became a household name. Mao's essay on Bethune was bundled with two others, and the collection was called The Three Constantly Read Articles. Now get this. During the Cultural Revolution, it became mandatory for hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens to study these essays. His story wasn't just a story anymore. It became required reading for an entire nation.
Okay, so let's pull these two completely different threads together. On one side, we have the flawed, complicated man that a few people in Canada might remember, and on the other, the perfect, selfless symbol that is revered by billions in China.
And this image just says it all, doesn't it? On one hand, you've got these epic, heroic posters of Bethune charging through the mountains on a horse, and on the other, his birthplace in Gravenhurst, Canada, a quiet, modest little historic house. One is an epic myth, the other is barely a whisper.
I mean, the difference couldn't be more stark. In Canada, he's a complex, controversial footnote. In China, he's a foundational political symbol, a selfless martyr whose story is taught to kids starting in elementary school. It's the exact same life, just remembered in two totally, completely different universes.
And in the end, this is the ideal that Bethune was shaped into. Mao's words lifted him way beyond just being a doctor. He became the very definition of a person's worth, someone noble, pure, and of value to the people. The flawed Canadian was completely erased, and in his place was the perfect Chinese hero.
And all of this leaves us with a much bigger question, doesn't it? Bethune's story really shows us just how powerful a symbol can be. So powerful that it can completely overshadow the messy, complicated reality of a human being. It really makes you wonder, how much of history is about the people who actually lived it, and how much is about the stories that we, for whatever reason, need to tell?